the top stories, and we kick things off with LeSean McCoy. Shady McCoy is back in the news, obviously not playing, but he had some choice words for his former offensive coordinator in Eric Bieniemy of the Kansas City Chiefs.
It's the reason why every year they keep hyping him up to get a coaching job, a head coach or offensive coordinator job for everywhere else. And then when the time comes, nobody hires him because they know what type of coach he really is.
So Shady had some really choice words for a offensive coordinator that everyone has been talking about being the next head coach, but never gets the job. So Aaron, I'll start with you. What were your first thoughts when LeSean McCoy and that quote popped into the world?
Like most people, I thought LeSean McCoy is just trying to get clout. But then when I thought about it a little bit more, this is things we've said. And I'm not speaking directly to what LeSean McCoy is referring to about his time in Kansas City. But Eric Bieniemy, every year we're talking about him becoming a head coach or being a possible candidate for a head coach, and then he doesn't get the job. And we've come on here a number of times. I know myself particular have said there's got to be something. There's something these teams are not seeing, or there's relationships that have been fractured that is not giving him the opportunity, because we've seen time and time again other guys get the job over him. And I think Shady's onto something, but I don't know if it's directly what he's referring to as far as the reason why Eric Bieniemy is not getting these jobs. I'm sure there's a little bit of scorned ex-girlfriend type mode going on in his mind, but there's definitely something going on with Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, I mean, I just like the idea that we finally have some insight. And despite what you want to say, whether Shady McCoy just hasn't been around, so no one's heard from him, so he's just talking, or this and that might have some sort of truth to it. But let's not forget, these players in these locker rooms, they are upfront and personal. They see these things. They see things that that other people who are acting these things don't recognize other people are seeing. And what I mean by that is, who's to say Shady McCoy wasn't sitting off on the sideline watching Eric Bieniemy berate another player who maybe deserved it, but could have went a different way about it, And it's things like that. We look at how Urban Meyer was left from Jacksonville because of the things that he was saying and the things that he was doing to his staff and his players. These are adults. These are grown men with families, responsibilities, and there's a level of respect that goes on. And if you go into an interview with any of these organizations and they get the type of feeling that you're not going to be a positive influence to them, they have reason to stave off and go another route until they feel that you're the right person for their position, for their opportunity. So if it can't just be what you put on the field, it has to be the type of person you are, the fact that you are or are not a leader of men. And so far, it seems that Eric Bieniemy hasn't been able to prove that to an organization. Rooting for him, but doesn't look like we've gotten there yet.
It's always interesting when players that either retire or just have been out of the league for a little while end up having these platforms where they speak. And it doesn't just happen with LeSean McCoy. You see it with other football players, basketball players, baseball players. They go on these podcasts. They tell stories of certain things. And this sounds like something Shady McCoy's held on to for a little while. And he had a platform to voice why he believed Bieniemy was not going to be a head coach. There's a reason there. And I think it does go back to AJ's point. You gotta make sure that you make these background checks big time when it comes to head coaches. The Urban Meyer example is one that, just got thrown over the wall. That was one that they thought, okay, yeah, he's a winner, let's bring him in. Doesn't matter. Character concerns can get by as long as you win football games. Well, that got magnified. So if that truly is the case with Eric Bieniemy, then maybe LeSean McCoy's onto something here.
This one just doesn't make sense to me, to be completely honest. And I see it in the chat. Some people are saying Shady's just trying to stay relevant. Although I'm not completely sold on these old timers or these guys that are not in the league anymore trying to stay relevant. I don't believe that. These guys are former NFL players. They're always going to be relevant in some way, shape, or form. I just want to go back to when Shady was actually playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. He actually said these very kind words about his former offensive coordinator, saying he's one of the best running backs coaches in the league. It's time for him. You keep hearing his name come up. Usually where there's some smoke, there's some fire. I think eventually he'll get a job. He told that to NewJersey.com. To me, this is very weird to me. Like, I don't understand why he would say something like this. Like you said, Aaron, there may be something going on in the background that we as the media do not see. But Shady goes from praising him to trying to tear him down? Maybe he was praising him because he had to, or maybe now he's just salty because he's not in the league or didn't like the way things were handled in Kansas City.
Well, okay, so I that's the first time I've seen that quote. You mentioned you had a quote earlier from Shady. Can you bring the quote back up? Because I read that completely different. I read it as he gave him respect, saying he's one of the best running back coaches. Like, it's time for him to get an opportunity. But I don't know where there's smoke, there's some fire. Like, yeah. I don't know. Is he saying, like, there's other things going on that are keeping him from getting that job? Or is he talking about there's smoke, there's fire, like he's going to be getting hired soon? The one thing that I will speak to, I don't think this is about old heads trying to stay relevant. I think if we didn't have the whole entire clip there, Shady said some other things about the way he coaches some of the older players. They aren't very receptive to that style, and they're not going to take it. And I think that's where the tension came in between him and Bieniemy. Is like, hey, he's like, I'm a veteran. I've done this. I've been in the game. You're not going to talk to me like you may talk to someone. And that goes directly to coaching style. So even though this player had a disagreement, he could still have respect for that coach. And so I think what he's saying is maybe these organizations don't feel like Eric Bieniemy can connect enough in a locker room to a different personalities, older players, veteran players, younger players, and be able to command that locker room like they want from a head coach. And I think that's more of what it's about than just him trying really to bash Eric Bieniemy. And sometimes these things come across the wrong way when they're put out there a certain way. And he was having a conversation based on what Brandon Marshall and them were really asking him about his time in Kansas City. So I think it's probably blown a little bit out of proportion, but make no mistake about it. Shady's a respected running back in the NFL. Eric Bieniemy is, for the most part, from what we hear, is a respected offensive coordinator in the NFL. Does that mean he's going to get along with every player? No. And we've seen tensions like this in the past. I just think there is something to be said why he's not getting hired as a head coach year after year after year when guys are getting their first opportunity and he consistently doesn't.
That may be a good thing. It may be a bad thing, or maybe it obviously may be a bad thing, but it also could be a good thing. It could be one of those things like, okay, maybe a Josh McDaniels situation where he's waiting for that right opportunity, or he's just waiting for the old man to go on to retirement. And that old man, I don't mean it disrespectfully about Andy Reid, but it's
he's old.
But
it's okay.
waiting for Andy Reid to pass the torch to Eric Bieniemy. Maybe they have an unwritten agreement of, okay, hey, like, you're going to be my offensive coordinator while I'm here, and then when I'm ready to go, the keys are all yours. We're going to move on. So, I mean, who knows?
Well, the only thing is, I think that's the last resort, because we hear he applies for damn near every job that's open in the NFL. And if the case was I'm just waiting for Andy Reid, I mean, sure, maybe you toss your name in the hat for one or two to see your standing, but I mean, he is actively in the name for damn near every head coaching opening, at least spoken about once, So with it being like, if he was waiting for him to retire, I don't think he'd be so aggressive in the offseason. I think he really does want a head coaching position. And at this point in time, it's to go and try it no matter where it is. I mean,
and let's not forget. Go ahead and finish.
If it was me, I would have done the Josh McDaniels route, tried it out, and hoped I could come back to Andy Reid while he was still there to continue to learn. And then maybe I get that position, or maybe I'm ready in the future when the next opportunity comes up.
Don't forget, he jumped on that Brian Flores lawsuit. He joined in on that Brian Flores lawsuit, and there could be something to that. And now that he's in there, he might not get an opportunity anytime soon.
Really good point.